Good evening and welcome to Wethersfield Talk. I'm your host, Rick Gary. Tonight we're continuing our theme of interviews with town leaders and elected officials in the town of Wethersfield. And tonight we went all the way to the top and we have the mayor. Tonight we have Mayor Ken Lesser. Ken, thanks for coming on the program.
Rick, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Good. So Ken, first of all, why don't we just start real quick. How long have you been the mayor and how long have you been on the council?
So I've been the mayor for 6 months and been on the council for 4 years in Wethersfield and was 2 years on the school board.
Oh, great. So you have some experience on there.
I do, but this is the best job I've ever had.
Is it?
It is.
You're the Wethersfield's cheerleader.
I am the head cheerleader. That's one of the hats I wear, and I'm proud of it.
And just so people know, in Wethersfield, we have a town council form of government. So we have a town manager,
Correct.
right? And then you guys are,
So we're like the board of directors, Rick. So I would be like the chair of the board of directors, and then the counselors would be part of the board of directors, and the town manager is like the CEO.
okay. So he runs the town, you give him direction,
Yeah, we create the vision,
Yeah.
we have the policies, and he's like the implementer and the staff. Yeah, great
Okay.
question.
and we've interviewed Fred on the show,
Yeah.
so people have had the chance to meet Fred. So let's get right into it. Obviously, this is time of year is budget time.
Yes.
Time that I'm sure you guys love.
Yeah.
Budget workshops.
Yeah, I think I've
meetings.
aged a few years during the budget, but yes.
So maybe you could tell us where are we in the budget process?
Yep.
And what meetings, are there more meetings coming up and more things coming up?
So we are near the end of the budget process. By our statute, we have to be completed by May 15th, which is next Wednesday. We have a scheduled meeting Monday, May 13th, to act on the budget and pass a 24-25 Wethersfield town budget next Monday.
Next month. So that's the town's deadline?
Yeah, it's actually Wednesday, but we're doing it Monday. Yep,
Okay. So you've received the Board of Ed's budget.
correct.
It's been approved.
By the Board of Ed. The Board of Ed's budget calls for a 6.5% increase.
Okay.
That's what they approved, the board, and that's what they presented to us. The town side of the budget was the town manager 5.5% for an overall budget increase of 6%.
Okay.
And we are now working on that, and I'm hoping and thinking it's going to be a little lower.
So that's what you're working on now, is trying to
Yeah,
look at all the details and maybe get it down as much as
Yeah, and that's exactly it, Rick. You know, the budget I view as a statement of priorities. What are your priorities? And it's a balancing act between want to have really good services, because the quality of town has something to do with the quality of services, but keeping the tax rate reasonable. And that's the balancing act of trying to do that. And that's the hard part.
Yeah. And the Board of Ed's budget is a higher percentage of the overall budget, correct?
The board, great question. The Board of Ed's budget is about 52% of the overall budget. The overall Wethersfield budget is about $125 million, and about $65 million of that, just over 50%, is the Board of Ed budget, roughly.
And I understand, I know we'd all love a 0% increase,
Yes.
but that's impossible. There are a lot of factors in the budget that are I don't want to say out of control completely, but there are healthcare costs, insurance costs, right? Things like that are a large part of the budget.
Yeah, so a lot of the budget is out of our control. It's contractual with health insurance, salary, and benefits. That's a lot of it. There are areas where we can make some investments, but primarily a lot of it is already chewed up, and there are already like 3-4% increases built in for some of those things.
Okay.
So, you know, there's not a lot of room. If you go under 3-4%, you sometimes are cutting programs or people.
Right.
So.
And right now, in the budget, is there any cuts to staff?
There are no proposed cuts to staff in the board or town budget, but the board had grants from federal money to hire math interventionists. So during COVID, kids lost a lot, in a lot of ways. We all know this. But one of the areas that was a big loss in terms of getting behind was in math. So we hired 7 math interventionists on a 3-year contract. They're going away and we're not renewing, which is difficult, but it's also expensive. So,
Right.
So it's not necessarily, it's not, what actually happens is a little complicated, but those folks bump other people into different positions, but the math interventionist position goes away. So it's unfortunate, but it's a reality.
But that's part of temporary relief funds. You
Correct.
have to expect it.
You're exactly right, Rick.
Right.
Yep.
So now the budget, you had public hearings, public
Yes.
meetings,
Yes.
workshop. Those are all done. Now it's just
Yeah, so the public has weighed in, and we've heard a lot of valuable feedback, and now we as counselors are deliberating,
right.
and we are kind of making choices and changes, and we're in that process right now, and then on Monday we will vote a budget.
Now, what about the state input to education, the funds that they provide?
Yeah.
Has that already been determined?
So the state is wrapping up, tomorrow is the end of the legislative session, May 8th. Today, they were still finalizing the budget. In particular, Rick, if we're going to get some of the education money back, it's about $400,000 we're waiting to hear.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't have
Good
that
question.
number yet?
We don't. We may have it tonight. Well, we have to have it by tomorrow because they're done tomorrow. So the good news is it'll be in time before we need to finalize
Okay,
our budget.
good.
And so roughly about $400,000 that's in play.
Good. That's not a small amount of change.
No,
so
it's
it makes
not.
a difference.
No, it's not.
Well, that's good. I mean, I know the budget is a tough thing, and you get a lot of public comment about the budget.
Yes.
So I know that's probably one of the most difficult parts of the council.
It's one of the most important parts.
Yes.
It's not always the most enjoyable.
Right. Well, that's great. So another thing, unless there's anything else you want to talk about the budget, you can only talk about that so much, right?
I think we covered it.
So I've been to a council meeting recently, and I know another big topic in town is the Keisha Farm.
Yes.
So I'm just curious, where are we? There was a committee set up to look at possible uses of the Keisha Farm, right?
Yes. So in 2018, we passed a referendum to purchase the Keisha Farm, and it has been a challenging issue for the last 5 or 6 years for the town to try and determine what the best use is. Right. As of last night, we took a vote and it was actually in the motion to use this word, to unlock Keisha Farm for multi-use things for educational purposes, trails, passive and active recreation, concerts, limited agricultural use. We passed that, and now any group that wants to use it, because it's town-owned property, can go through the town manager in the normal process of requesting use of the property, and it's kind of unlocking the property.
Okay.
And it's my hope, Rick, that that property, it's a beautiful property, will be a gem for generations, long after I'm involved, that people will use that. Maybe there'll be a baseball game, a soccer game, kids will be walking, biking, walking their dogs, trails, limited farming, educational programs, and that's kind of what we unlocked last night to let those things happen.
Good.
So,
And
it's
the
good.
barn property, the barn will stay
As of now,
as
yes.
of now,
Yes.
right? I
yes.
know that's always tough because it's
That
an
is,
old
yes.
building and it's hard to maintain, but as of now.
Yes, let me promote something that's happening at the barn this summer that your listeners will be interested in. So we're going to have a concert series, 3 concerts. The first one is July 1st, and it is the Governor's Foot Guard Band, and they're going to play patriotic music, and I've heard that. If residents want to come out, you'll really enjoy it. Bring a picnic. It's free. And then July 13th, we are going to have a band play of 2 local performers. And then July 20th, we're going to have Broadway at the barn, which Cindy Lesser, someone I know pretty well, who's an
Yes.
amazing singer,
I've heard her. She's
amazing singer,
fantastic.
and she is putting a group of singers together to do Broadway show tunes at the barn. So you bring a little pizza, maybe a little wine, and you sit and listen to these concerts. So this is part of the Keisha concert series this summer.
So we're already starting to use the property.
It's fantastic.
Good. And I know I was involved in the Wilkes Farm committee. You know, it's tough. Residents have a lot of different views, but I know you've had town input meetings, right? Listen to the town and you try and come up with the best.
We've had a lot of input, and frankly, we've had a lot of great ideas, and also it's been contentious. I was about 6'3" with dark hair before we started the Keisha issue a couple years ago, and now I'm a little shorter and a lot grayer. But it was a challenging issue, but I think we've come to a good solution that the whole town will benefit from.
Yeah. Again, I think in the end it'll be good. You know, kind of on that same theme, the Millwoods was always our kind of gem of a park.
Yeah.
And we had a Millwoods master plan.
Yes.
That never quite got finished.
Yeah.
And another thing for me personally, when you look at other parts of town like the Cove Park or others that really need an uplift. Kind of a facelift.
Yeah, 100%.
Are those things in?
Yes.
I don't want to say process, but they're on the radar.
So it's a great question, and you're an excellent interviewer. So Millwoods, which is our kind of sports complex, we are updating, we passed this, updating the Millwoods master plan. We've moved the allocation of funds that was originally going to place a field at Keisha Farm to Millwoods.
Okay.
We're going to build pickleball courts. I don't know if you've tried that, Rick.
You keep telling me you're going to teach me.
I'm not very good.
Even worse.
But you're athletic. It's a fun sport, and it's the fastest growing sport. And we're going to build pickleball, but we're going to kind of maximize Millwoods. It's beautiful, but we're going to upgrade a little bit.
Good.
Yeah, and we have a master plan we're updating.
Good. Because sometimes I think people get the impression that things aren't happening, and there's been times lag where things don't happen.
Yeah.
It'll be nice to see something.
It's going to happen, and I'm impatient to have things happen, so I'm going to help drive some of those things as the head cheerleader of Wethersfield.
Good. Well, as the head cheerleader,
Yeah.
another very important aspect is economic development.
Yes.
Right? So maybe you can just fill us in on where we are, any new projects, ideas, companies?
Yeah. So economic development's really important, and in Wethersfield we're pretty built out. So we don't have a great mix on our tax base right now. About 90% of our taxes come from residents, you and me, and about 10% come from commercial. We're pretty built out. So what do we need to do? We have to get some of the non-performing properties, and I'll mention a few in a second, to be higher performing, and we need to redevelop other sites. So there's probably a half a dozen properties in town, and the listeners will be interested in this, that we got to get moving that have been dormant for a long time. The auction house,
Okay.
the Masonic home, the old nursing home, 1,000 Weight Watchers. So we are trying to be much more aggressive and creative in using potentially using some town funds to help move these properties. We're looking at certain interesting businesses, retail and restaurants, to come into some of these properties. We're looking at, the Masonic home is a good example. That is a beautiful property in a key spot of town, and it's just been dormant for many, 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 many years. Auction house, the same thing. So that's it. And then looking at redevelopment, I'll give you an example. Tonight, this is going to be interesting for your listeners. There is an application before Town Planning and Zoning where the Wethersfield Diner is. There is a proposal tonight, and it's public, to raise the diner and build apartments. 4 stories is the proposal. We'll see if it gets approved. And then, if that happens, to create what I'll call a walkable node, Rick, where behind there it will connect, and I actually like this plan, it will connect Old Wethersfield with the Silestine Highway. And that we're desperate need for more market rate housing, and we also could use some more affordable housing. And this would create a little more housing, but also as an example of economic development we're working on. We'll see if that gets
Possibly
financed.
some retail and other
Yes,
development in there.
yes, and we have many other things, economic development, in the works. And lastly, related to this, and interesting, tomorrow we are having the State Economic Development Commissioner, Dan O'Keefe, come to Wethersfield to talk to residents about economic development and what's happening in the state, and some of the state programs that towns, not just Wethersfield, can apply for. That's Dan O'Keefe tomorrow at 10 o'clock, Wednesday, May 8th, at the Webb Barn. So a lot of good things happening.
Good.
And the governor's coming on Thursday. We could talk about that too.
Okay. Well, just to finish up on economic
Yeah.
development, I know that the town has limited input, right? It's going to be, businesses have to have their demographics, and
Yes.
is it going to work, and all
Yes.
these things before that happens.
Yes.
Obviously, the town just has to be there to help as much as possible. Do we still look at like tax incentives and other programs to help businesses?
Yes, and we use tax incentives for the Borden, which is the most significant development we've had in Wethersfield, probably in the last 20, 25 years, and we use a tax abatement program. And yes, we're still looking at those types of things, yes.
Yeah, it can be very helpful.
Totally agree.
So now that you already talked about events, we have the Economic Development Director coming. What else do we have going on in town?
Yeah, so we have a lot going on, and just this month of May, let me give your listeners a few highlights. We have the governor coming on Thursday. He's covering to do a press conference and ribbon cutting on the Putnam Bridge Trail. So this is going to be a new trail for walking and biking, and as you know, Rick, not just Wethersfield, but communities across the country are trying to be more bikeable and walkable for healthier living for all of us. So the governor is coming, which is great for Wethersfield, on Thursday. On Friday, this is all happening this week, on Friday, May 9th, WTIC 1080 radio, which for people like me who are a little older, we remember TIC. Maybe the younger listeners don't listen, but Bob Steele and Ray Dunaway, they're coming to do their morning show here to profile Wethersfield, which is great. We have the Bikes on Main, which is exciting. Approximately 80 bikes decorated.
Is that this weekend?
Yeah.
Okay.
Beautiful. And then 2 other things I'll mention in May. we have on May 18th a special ceremony. It's Armed Forces Day, and we are going to be honoring former Mayor Dan Camilleri. Some of your residents, particularly some, again, a little older, may remember Mayor Camilleri, and we're going to do an honorary street naming and a dedication of the Northbrook Green at 11 o'clock. Anybody wants to come, it's a public ceremony for former Mayor Dan Camilleri. So we're excited about that.
Dan was one of the biggest cheerleaders of Wethersfield.
Yes.
He, I always say with politicians, love him or hate him, but nobody loved Wethersfield like Dan Camilleri.
Yeah, you're 100% right. He was an inspiration, and I want to be cheerleader like him. And I was fortunate over the last few years to kind of get to know him and spend some time with us. And there was just a magic about the man, just a special quality, kind of a one in a million, and a great person, role model for me, kind of in this role, someone to look up to.
Nice. Now we've covered quite a few things. Let's cover what I think are a couple of positives. And I keep talking about this because I think it's great, is the yard waste program.
Yeah.
I have my brown barrel that I've already filled twice with yard waste. So I think it's one of the a win that the town council did. Why don't you fill us in on it?
Yeah, so this is a great program, the Brown Barrel Program. We originally had 700 brown barrels. They sold out like this. Now we've gone around a second time. We sold out again, 1,400 barrels, and we've got so many positive responses about this and the yard waste. You wouldn't think waste was such an important topic, but it is. And I believe that government can be a force for good and help people a little bit. And this is a good example, as you point out, where people really like this and it's really helping them. So 1,400 so far.
I can remember when I used to go to town council meetings on a regular basis, there was a point where people could no longer put grass in the regular garbage. And that wasn't our call, that was from the refuse company. Now you have a place to put grass clippings, leaves, twigs, all that stuff that you just don't know what to do with because it's not allowed in the regular garbage.
It's so popular that garbage would be this popular. It's great, yeah.
Well, I guess I'm getting a little too excited about yard
No,
waste.
it's a great, a lot of people are. You're not alone, 1,400 so far.
Exactly. Now another positive that I think anyway is the introduction of electric vehicles into town.
Yes, so we're proud of this. We were, Wethersfield and Westport were the first towns to have police cruisers. We have 2 of them. We purchased 2 electric vehicles, and they really like them. They're fast.
Yes.
And, in the future, again, long after I'm involved, most of us will be driving electric vehicles. Everything will be converted for our kids, the grandkids. They're going to be driving electric cars. It's so good for the environment. So we have become one of the leaders in that, and we have 2, and we're looking at others. We're going to need, as the state does, more charging stations. That's a big issue, but we're moving in that direction, and Wethersfield wants to be a leader on that. So it's good.
And people, I know I have friends who will argue with me about how good for the environment, but every year we increase our green energy input into our electric infrastructure.
Yes.
So every year they become better and better.
Yes.
And that's what people have to remember. As we get better at green technology, electric cars become a better. But also with those police cars, they will never need an oil change or power steering fluid or all these maintenance issues.
Yeah. We have to keep moving and change and progress. We used to have horse and buggies, and then we had cars, and now we have electric. It's just the way things
absolutely
move. Take advantage of that. Yeah.
So I'll give you the floor now. If there's anything else that you want to bring up that we haven't talked about yet.
I'll bring up one thing. So I love being mayor. It's an honor of a lifetime. I'm grateful. And the most favorite program I have, and this may be a future guest for you, we can talk about it, is we have a Kid Mayor program. So this might be great. It'd be much more interesting for your listeners to listen to one of the kid mayors than to listen to me. But I'll just explain it for everybody real quickly. So we have a kid mayor in each elementary school and a kid school board chair. So in each elementary school. So we have 5 elementary school, 10 kids in total. They all had to submit an essay, Rick, of what they would do if they were the mayor or the head of the school system. And we got some wonderful ideas. And we're teaching them about civics. We took them to the state capitol. We're going to have 1 or 2 of them on the radio on Friday.
Wonderful.
But I'm really proud of it because it really is, first of all, I learned from the kids, but it's really a nice way to get them involved in local government. And if you're ever interested, I would love to see one of them as a guest. And again, as I said before, I think they might be a little more interesting than I am. But
no, you're very interesting. Well, that's great. I mean, we covered a lot of topics here, and the idea of this program is to introduce our town leaders, to get news and updates, and we'll do this again, and we'll continue to do this if you like.
I'd love to.
But also, just so you know, as town residents, that you need to, if you have concerns or if you want to say thank you about something, go to the council meetings, email your representatives. They'd love to hear from you. It's not, you don't want people to be quiet. You want them to tell you what they want. You need to hear the input from the residents.
Yes.
Good or bad.
Yeah. Government works best when it's a partnership between the residents and the leaders, and we want input. That's where we get a lot of good ideas.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, unless you have something else.
I have nothing.
I think that was a great
hope
little
we can
segment.
do it. Thank you so much.
And
thank you, Channel 14.
And and Channel 14 is also, just a little plug for Channel 14, is a resource available to all residents in Wethersfield. If you want to do your own program or just learn about filming and editing and production, we have a great studio here. Our president, Leslie, and vice president, or treasurer, Eileen, have worked really hard to get new cameras and equipment and sound and lighting. So please, give us a call.
It's beautiful
Love to have
here.
people come down. Ken, thank you very
Rick,
much for
thank
coming
you.
on.
I appreciate it.
And we'll
Enjoyed
see you
it.
soon.
Thank you.